The alarm had not even finished its first cry before I was already running. I am not proud of that. But I am Valorian, and Valorians are built for speed, not confrontation. Our legs are long, our instincts older than language, and every nerve in my body was screaming one single word the moment that containment alarm tore through the hallway. Run. So I ran, along with everyone else. The corridor outside the practicum wing was pure chaos. Grethians shoved past me, their wide, flat bodies barely fitting through the emergency passage. A Solvathi student named Kel dropped her datapad and did not stop to pick it up. Two Kreth, the largest beings at our entire academy, the ones who could bend steel pipes with their bare hands, were moving faster than I had ever seen them move. One of them knocked me sideways into the wall without even noticing. The Academy AI spoke in its flat, calm voice over the speaker system. It said that containment had failed in the practicum wing. It said all students should evacuate immediately to emergency sectors. It said do not engage. It said do not attempt to assist. It said evacuate. We evacuated. We were very good at evacuating. I made it perhaps 30 meters down the corridor before something made me look back. I do not know what it was, some small, quiet instinct that was different from the screaming one. I stopped, pressed myself against the wall and looked. The Vorcai came around the corner like a nightmare that had grown impatient waiting to be dreamed. I had seen hollows of Vorcai before. Every student at the Galactic Interspecies Academy received an orientation packet, and that packet included a full file on the live specimens housed in the practicum wing. The file on the Vorcai was the longest one. It had a warning header. It had a secondary warning beneath the first one. It had been classified as threat level Omega-9 by the Galactic Fauna Index, which was the highest classification that existed, and which had only ever been assigned to 4 creatures in recorded history. I had read that file. I had looked at the hollows. I thought I understood what a Vorcai was. I did not understand what a Vorcai was. It was enormous. 8 limbs, each one ending in something between a claw and a blade, clicking against the metal floor in a rhythm that made my teeth hurt. Its body was armored in overlapping plates the color of deep water, and across its face and upper thorax, bioluminescent nodes pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves of cold blue and violet light. That was its threat display. The file had explained that. When a Vorcai went into hunting mode, the lights came on. The lights were on. It hunted by detecting electromagnetic fear signals. Every living creature produces them. Adrenaline, panic, the chemical signature of a body preparing to flee, all of it readable to the Vorcai like a beacon. The file had explained that too. It meant that running made you more visible to it, not less. It meant that fear was essentially an invitation. Every single one of us in that corridor was broadcasting fear loud enough to be heard across the station. The Vorcai swung its massive head and oriented on the corridor, on us, on the cloud of terror signals we were helpfully producing. And then it saw Nina Vance. Nina was standing exactly where she had been standing before the alarm went off. She had been leaning against the wall outside the practicum wing seminar room, finishing a meal bar, waiting for the rest of us to collect our things before we walked back to the common block together. She was the only one of us who had not started running yet. Not because she was frozen. I want to be clear about that. I watched her face. Nina Vance was not frozen. She was watching the Vorcai the way a person watches something they are trying to understand. It charged. 8 limbs hit the floor in a surge of motion, and the Vorcai covered the distance between the corner and Nina in less time than it takes to blink twice. It was fast in a way that made my brain simply refuse to process what I was seeing, because nothing that large should be able to move like that. The floor vibrated with each impact. The bioluminescent display shifted from slow pulses to rapid strobing, blue-white and blinding. Nina moved. She dropped, not away, down. Her knees bent, her weight shifted low, her feet spread to shoulder width, and she brought her hands up open in front of her. I learned later what that posture was called. Humans learn it young. Some of them learn it before they can properly read. It is a fighting stance, and the fact that Nina had dropped into one while a creature the size of a transport vehicle charged her at full speed is something I have never fully recovered from thinking about. She yelled. One word, short, sharp, loud enough that I felt it in my chest from 30 meters away. The sound she made was not a scream. It was not the sound of someone afraid. It was a bark, a command, an aggressive noise aimed directly at the Vorcai like a thrown object. The Vorcai stopped. Not fully. It stuttered. 1 full second, maybe slightly more, where all 8 limbs locked and its head tilted, and the strobing bioluminescence flickered irregularly. In all the documentation on Vorcai behavior, in all the recorded encounters, there is not a single instance of prey making that sound. There is not a single instance of prey doing anything except fleeing or freezing. The Vorcai had no category for what Nina was doing. Nina used that second. There was a fire suppression canister on the wall beside her. Red casing, standard emergency hardware, bolted into the wall at chest height. I had walked past it every day for 2 semesters and never once thought about it as anything other than a piece of background equipment. Nina grabbed it with both hands and pulled. The bolts sheared. I heard them. A sharp metallic sound, 2 quick pops, and the canister came free of the wall like it had always meant to be held. Nina moved forward, 1 step directly toward the Vorcai, and discharged the canister at full pressure into its face. Into the bioluminescent nodes. Into the sensory cluster that the Vorcai used to process light and electromagnetic signal and the fear signatures of prey. White chemical suppressant exploded across the Vorcai's face. It reared back. All 8 limbs scrambled on the floor, and the sound it made was nothing like the hunting silence it had been moving in before. It was loud and disoriented and confused. Nina screamed again. The same sharp sound, louder. And she stepped forward once more, still holding the canister, still moving toward the creature instead of away from it. The Vorcai recoiled. That is the word. That is the only word for it. The galaxy's deadliest classified predator. The creature that had forced a planetary quarantine lasting 6 years the last time one escaped. Recoiled from a human woman holding a fire extinguisher. I know why. Now. I have read the follow-up analysis. The electromagnetic signature Nina was broadcasting was not a fear signal. Or rather, it was a fear signal, but it was layered over something else. Something the Vorcai had no framework for. Adrenaline spiked but behavior escalating. Threat detected but movement advancing. Every signal the Vorcai understood said prey, and every action Nina took said something else entirely. The Vorcai could not reconcile it. Its hunting instinct had no drawer to put her in. The emergency containment team arrived 40 seconds later. Heavy-grade stun apparatus, 3 handlers in full shielding, the kind of equipment that took real coordination to deploy. They drove the Vorcai back toward the practicum wing in controlled bursts, keeping it disoriented, keeping it moving. The containment took another 3 hours to finalize. I was told it was actually fast for a Vorcai recontainment. Nina watched the handlers work until the blast doors sealed behind them. Then she looked down the corridor and found me still standing against the wall. "You okay?" she called. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I closed it again. She walked over to me, looked me up and down, and appeared satisfied that I was physically unharmed, which I was. "Your hands are shaking," she said. I looked at my hands. She was right. "You were not afraid," I said. It came out as an accusation. I did not mean it that way. Nina looked at me for a moment. Her breathing was still elevated. There was a streak of white suppressant foam across her left sleeve, and a small cut on her right hand, where the bracket edge of the canister had caught her palm when she ripped it free. She had not mentioned the cut. She had not looked at it once. "I was terrified," she said. I stared at her. "The whole time?" I said. "From the second that alarm went off." She turned the damaged canister over in her hands and set it carefully against the wall. My heart was going so fast I could hear it. I couldn't feel my feet properly. My hands were shaking worse than yours. "Then why?" I started, and stopped, because I did not know how to finish the sentence. Nina tilted her head slightly, like the question was one she had considered before, like she had an answer she had been carrying for a long time. "Because being scared doesn't mean you stop," she said. She said it simply, not like a lesson. Not like something she had been taught, like something she had always known. The way you know which direction is down, the way you know the difference between sleeping and being awake. Something older than thought. We walked back to the common block in silence. I could not sleep that night. I sat at my study station and opened the GIA Xenobiology dossier on Earth. Not the 3-page orientation summary, but the full academic document. 400 pages compiled over 30 years of interspecies study. I had glanced at it once before. I read it properly for the first time that night. I read about the ice ages. Earth has had several periods of planetary cooling that drove most species into extinction. Humans had no fur, no natural insulation, no biological adaptation that should have allowed survival. They made tools, they learned fire, they survived anyway. I read about the predator history. Earth was thick with apex hunters during the period when humans were developing, creatures larger, faster, stronger, better equipped by nature for survival. Humans were prey for a long time, and then they were not. They looked at every predator on their planet, every creature that had been hunting them, and they picked up whatever was nearby, and they started hunting back. Within a geological eye blink, they were the apex. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they refused to accept the outcome that their biology suggested was written for them. I read about the diseases, events that swept through human populations and killed half of them. Half. And the humans who remained buried their dead and kept building their cities, kept developing their medicine, kept writing their literature and planting their crops and arguing with each other about philosophy and raising their children to be ready for a world that had already tried to kill them and would certainly try again. I read about the gravity. Earth runs at 1 full G, nearly double Valoria's. It means human bones are denser, their muscles built for heavier loads, their cardiovascular systems calibrated for sustained output under conditions that would exhaust most species. Every human body is, from birth, adapted to carry more weight than I ever will. I read the section on human psychological development, the part that stopped me longest. The researchers who wrote it were from 6 different species, and they all arrived at the same observation through different frameworks. Humans are unique, the document said, in that they teach their young, deliberately and systematically, that fear is a feeling rather than a directive, that the presence of fear does not determine the correct action, that the body's alarm system and the mind's decision-making are separate functions, and one does not have to follow the other. They learn it young, the document said, some before they can properly read. I thought about Nina dropping into that stance before the Vorcai finished its first charge. I closed the dossier. The academy cafeteria the next morning was quiet in a way that had nothing to do with the early hour. Word had spread through the night. The corridor footage had been time-stamped and archived by the Academy AI and transmitted to the Galactic Safety Commission with 17 separate flags of research interest. Every student at GIA had seen it at least twice. Several had seen it considerably more. When Nina came in and joined the food line, the room did the thing where sound simply ceases, not because anyone made a decision to be silent, because every being present was engaged in the same process at the same moment, which is the process of looking at a thing and realizing that everything you understood about it was only partly true. The Morethian instructor who taught our xenobiology course was sitting at the faculty table. The Morethians are the species who first cataloged the Vorcai. They named it. They classified it. They wrote the Omega-9 designation, and they wrote the planetary quarantine protocols, and they have spent 3 generations studying the creature, with all the careful, fearful respect that 3 generations of watching it can teach you. He watched Nina walk to the food counter and pick up a tray and examine the options. He did not speak. His expression was the expression of a scholar who has just discovered a gap in his own knowledge that he had not known was there. Lore, a Kreth student sitting 2 seats down from me, was the one who finally said something. Kreth are large and slow-speaking and deeply pragmatic. They do not waste words. She walked toward it, Lore said. No one answered, because there was nothing to add to that. It contained everything. She walked toward it. That was the complete story, and it was a story that none of us had a category for. Nina got her food and came to our table and sat down. She opened a small container of red liquid from her bag, the hot sauce she carried everywhere, and added a careful amount to her meal. She looked up and found all of us watching her. What? She said. Nothing, I said. She looked at me for a moment, then she pushed the red container across the table toward me. You should try it, she said. I looked at the container. I looked at her. I thought about everything I had read the night before. 400 pages of a species that looked at everything trying to kill it, and decided to walk toward it instead. I picked up the container. Okay, I said. I tried it. I regretted it immediately, spectacularly, in a way that involved several minutes of discomfort and a great deal of water. Nina laughed. It was a full, genuine laugh, the kind that takes up the whole face, and after a moment Lore started laughing too, and then the Solvathi student across from us, and then half the table. I laughed as well, eyes watering, completely uncertain whether I was crying. But here is the thing I thought about later, much later, when I had time to sit with it properly. The hot sauce was extraordinarily painful for me. Valorian taste receptors are nothing like human ones, and what Nina experienced as pleasantly warm was, for my biology, genuinely extreme. She knew that. She had learned enough about Valorian physiology in 2 semesters to know exactly what she was offering me. She offered it anyway. Not to hurt me, not to show off. Because I think she understood something about the relationship between discomfort and experience that her entire planet had spent 4 billion years figuring out. That the things that make you flinch are sometimes the things that are most worth knowing. That the moment of stepping toward the thing rather than away from it is the moment where something true gets learned. The Vorcai incident report went into the academic record. Nina received a commendation from the Galactic Safety Commission and a formal notice from 3 separate xenobiology research institutions requesting interviews. She agreed to 2 of them. The third had sent the request in a format she found rude. The Vorcai itself was transferred to a more secure facility 2 weeks later. The report on its recontainment noted, in a dry footnote that I have read many times, that the subject displayed unusual hesitation behaviors during the encounter that were inconsistent with prior documented interactions and were being flagged for further study. I sent the footnote to Nina. She sent back a reply containing 3 words and a small image of the hot sauce container. The 3 words were, "Worth studying, though." I thought about that for a long time, about what it means to be worth studying, about what it takes for a universe that has seen everything to encounter something it does not yet have a category for, about a species that climbed out of ice ages and outlasted predators and survived plagues and learned, deep in the marrow of their dense and stubborn bones, that the correct response to a charging threat is to drop into a stance and yell and grab whatever is nearest and step forward. I thought about the bioluminescent lights on the Vorcai's face going irregular and confused. I thought about Nina asking if I was okay. I think the galaxy has not yet finished learning what humans are. I think it has barely started. I think that is exactly what makes them so remarkable. And I think, if I am honest, that is also what makes them just a little bit frightening. Not because they are dangerous, most things in the galaxy are dangerous, but because they look at dangerous and they do not look away.